Hello, everyone. How are you doing? And welcome to another episode of the Dr. Will Show, where we have the discussions that are form our teachers to become better. Now, I just flubbed that intro because I'm so excited today. People, I'm here with Dr. Harapnuik and Dr. Uh, Thibodeaux, and we had this conversation before we even started. So that's why I'm so psyched. We were talking about how education is changing. So I'm not going to try to redo this intro, people, because if you're a fan of the show, you know how I do this. So today we will be talking about innovation in education, how education has been changing because of digital. So for those who will be watching and will be listening to this in the future, will you please introduce yourselves?
Go ahead, Dr. Thibodeaux.
My name is Tilisa Thibodeaux, and I am an assistant professor in the Digital Leading and Learning Program at Lamar University in Beaumont, Texas.
And I'm Dwayne Harapnuik. I'm also at Beaumont, Texas, working in the Digital Learning and Leading Program, and we're excited to be here to talk about the amazing potential that digital learning brings. Thanks for inviting us.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. Dr. Thibodeaux came on my radar because I follow some of her students, or former students, shall I say, and they were talking about, these pictures of graduation came up, and I said, well, what is this program all about? Because it's very interesting to see, and I went on your website to look at some of the courses that you were teach and offer, and I said, wow, this is awesome, because it's not something that it sort of happens every day. So let's jump in by beginning to talk about an overview of what is transpiring in public education right now.
Go ahead, Dr. Thibodeaux. You can take that one on.
To begin with, I feel that, and we kind of discussed this just a few minutes before this, many teachers are getting the opportunity to have, the one-to-one devices and the BYOD. And a lot of that is placed in their hands, and they don't really have experience with the tools or understand that technology is not necessarily a silver bullet. It's not going to solve all of their problems. People see it kind of these days, and I think, administration, teachers both alike, see it as sort of a bolt-on. And we have to be very careful that we don't just take technology and bolt it onto the learning environment, because then it becomes something add-on. And we don't, if you look at Seymour Papert and some of his workings, that's like putting the jet engine before the horse in the cart. So that to me is one issue sort of that's happening in education today. And as we work with students in our program, we see this, and we work with them on trying to use technology innovation as a catalyst for change. And in doing so, we run into some resistance and run into some issues. So our students really are trying to navigate how to be innovative while dealing with some resistance and looking at technology as the end-all be-all in solving the problems, which we know it doesn't. It should be something second nature, just as if we're brushing our teeth. So that's sort of my commentary there. Dr. H?
Yeah, I agree. We've got some challenges in education. I think one of the biggest challenges that we do have is that we don't appreciate the amazing time that we live in. Today, I'm coming to you from North Vancouver up in Canada, and I believe you're in Mississippi, and Dr. Thibodeau's in Beaumont. This is my daily activity. This is what Dr. Thibodeaux and I do on a daily basis. We communicate, whether it's with Skype or Google Hangouts or some sort of social media. And we also do this with our learners every day. Every day we're communicating through a variety of different ways, collaborating with different people. And we've been doing this for many, many years. This is the most amazing time to be a learner. We've got all these amazing technologies. We've got all the world's information available to us in the palms of our hands or at our fingertips. We can communicate with anybody at any time, with the experts, some of the foremost experts in the world, and yet that isn't making its way into the classroom. But it could be. It could be. And I think the problem that we have is that we're not recognizing the potential that is there, and we're simply viewing technology as that bolt-on, that jet engine that we can bolt onto the horse cart and fix it. We view technology, or too often people will view technology as a quick fix, rather than seeing technology as something that should actually disappear to facilitate the learning. The best technology, we argue, is a technology that just goes away. Because right now, think about this. In this podcast or in this video session, we're not enthralled with whatever technology we're using. We're having an amazing discussion, and we're excited that we can do it. And that's what we do in the DLL program at Lamar University. We built a program based on using authentic learning opportunities and giving students choice, ownership, and voice through those authentic learning opportunities to use technology to enhance their learning environment. Our students actually create real-world innovation projects in their classrooms, work on those projects, and they get a master's degree with it as to go along. They build an innovation plan. They build all these amazing things in organizational change strategy. They build professional development plans. They do measurement strategies and plans. And they're doing this in their classrooms. And not only that, they're spreading the ideas with their colleagues. Because if their classrooms are an amazing environment, it's their responsibility to share that amazing environment with their colleagues so that the learner has that same opportunity to use technology to enhance learning when they leave their classroom. We live in this amazing time. There's amazing potential. It's so exciting. Like you, I'm excited about this.
Well, I know I am, because one of the things when I talk to teachers is trying to get them to understand that they need to change before change is thrust upon them. Because we all remember when Friday night was hot night for Blockbuster. Blockbuster is gone now because they did not adapt and they did not understand how technology was moving. And I try to get teachers to understand understanding that with this technology, how you teach and how you think about teaching and learning must change as well, and not just, I'm going to put my kids in groups and I'm going to give them a digital worksheet, or I'm going to do some research, or we're going to do this and that. And I'm like, okay, all right.
Well, I think that's essentially what the Smart Board became for teachers who are resistive to change, who didn't have that continual, what we like to coin, Dr. H and I talk about a learner's mindset. It's so easy to take that worksheet and put it on a document camera and say I'm using technology, but that's really not what it's about. When our students can be the creators, when they can be the ones that are developed. We actually have a student in our program, and you may consider interviewing him at some point, but he worked with his team to build an e-cafe, an entrepreneurial cafe for his learners. What he did was he took what Dr. H was talking about in COBA through choice, ownership, and voice and authenticity, and developed a cafe at his school where these students actually had real life employable positions, jobs. They were able to choose what they wanted to do, their particular job that they wanted to do, and employ it within this e-cafe. And they took ownership because they, had that choice. So with that being said, it was an authentic, real opportunity. And one of his blog posts states, it says, this is not just an assignment, but this is something real. This is a job for them. And they took agency over that. So giving those students those opportunities, and that's something that we want to do in our program, is model everything that we ask our students to do as well. So then they go out and they can impact their learning environment. So what we do is we do that through setting up significant learning environments. So I think in leading into some of the next question and that you have, we might be able to talk a bit more about significant learning environments through choice, ownership, and voice, and authentic learning opportunities.
Mm-hmm. So getting to that, how is Lamar University's master's program in digital learning and leading preparing its students to actually lead change within schools and classrooms?
Well, the way that we work is we actually have students create authentic projects right from the get-go. We've got 2 courses where we introduce students to an authentic e-portfolio in the second course, and in the first course we introduce them to the learner's mindset and the growth mindset, and to get them to recognize that some well tried and true constructivist ideas, from old people like Dewey and Bruner and Piaget and Papert, these tried and true ideas of actually using authentic learning, real concrete experiences, that actually works. So we expose them to this amazing heritage of thinking that we have in the literature. There's some amazing research that's there, and it's well established. We get their mindset shifted. We get them playing around with their e-portfolio. We get them to develop their voice, and then we let them loose on how are they going to change their environment. They build an innovation plan based on what they want to do, whether it's blended learning, an online program, a makerspace, an e-cafe. It goes on, e-portfolios, it goes on and on and on. They build a genuine project in one of our core courses. They build an organizational change strategy to implement it. They build they design some of the courses that are going to be related to it, and they build all the pieces for that innovation plan, and they actually do the innovation plan through their entire master's program. So how we're different is we give our students choice, ownership, and voice through that authentic project, through the authentic learning, through the authentic e-portfolio, and we actually model that, and we give them that choice that we expect them to give to their learners. And so we're modeling the environment we want to create. We've created a significant learning environment. We teach online, and we use a wide assortment of technology, all forms of video conferencing, from Adobe Connect to Zoom to Google Hangouts to, well, every form of social media, Twitter. It's all there. We've got a Facebook group. We use all these tools. Google Docs, you name it, we use it. Our students are creating videos, creating prezzies. They're creating communities of practice, personal learning environments. They're doing all these things as they actually implement their innovation strategy. Now, Dr. Thibodeaux and the other instructors, we come alongside as guides, and we support, and we encourage, and we ask questions, because we're not the audience. When our students submit assignments, they're actually not submitting the assignment to us. They're sometimes submitting it to the principal, to the curriculum committee, because these are real, authentic projects. They're doing the innovation. They're not talking about it. They're not just studying it. They're not writing about it. They're doing it. Right, so that is what makes us different, and we model the same thing. We actually practice what we preach. Dr. Thibodeaux and I both have extensive e-portfolios. We live this. I've been living this since 1995. My first online course happened in 1995. So for me, this has been, many years of developing the knowledge and skills and ability that I'm sharing with my learners. Because you know what? We can change the world one student at a time, right? One classroom at a time. So again, like I've said, there's never been a better time to be a learner, and there's never been a better time to be an educator. We have the ability to really change things. And I like what you said. We want our learners, our teachers, to be the change that is necessary in their world, and we equip them for that. So that's how we're different.
Mm-hmm. So now I want to throw this out there to you, because you mentioned the mental mindset, and that is about 70% of the work I try to do, because I can teach you how to use a Google Doc all day, but if your thought process is the same as it was beforehand, there's not going to be any fundamental shift in how you teach. How do you work with teachers in understanding the critical nature or transformation of what technology can do? Because they're walking into your classroom with so many years of teaching experience. They have so much programming, so to speak. And how do you erase their programming and chart them on a new path?
Well, Tilisa, this is your area. Failing forward. Go for it. Explain what you do.
Let me just talk about the program, because we meet this kind of resistance. Teachers are so used to Thorndikean standardization, like you said, this protocol. This is the way we have to do things. If you look at Roger Schenck and Teaching Minds and some of the books and publications that are out recently around it, it takes a little while for them to embrace that change. Model is one of the biggest things, having these conversations. But the key thing is coming down to that ownership piece. They have to take ownership of whatever they're doing if they want to make those changes. And if they're going to have some ownership, they have to have choice. There has to be a bit of choice. They have to be doing something that's real and authentic and engaging, not just for their students, but for them too. They have to take. So and this is something I've done before as a classroom teacher myself, I would, develop projects relating around augmented reality. But if I develop every aspect of it, I'm asking all the questions. You know, Alan November would say, well, who owns the learning then, right? But I want my learners to own the learning. So I'm going to shift a little bit of that ownership over to them, give them a little bit of control. So sometimes teachers need a little bit of time and modeling for experimentation. They need a little bit of opportunity to have a little bit of success with it. Get a little feedback with it, work collaboratively with other teachers. And sometimes it's a matter of finding some of those key influencers, those people on campus who are willing to take, they're innovators. They're that 2.5%. If you take a look at, Everett Rogers' model, that they're willing to take those changes, take those risks and chances, and mold, adapt, and embrace, and be flexible. That's really, I think, what it comes down to. And then other people start asking questions, and they want to know. One way that we've met with resistance and adversity in our program is our students communicate, engage their audience. And I say adults, they're all teachers in the classroom. They communicate and engage audience through their e-portfolios. So if they're on the cusp or on the verge of, I'm not really comfortable with this, when they start feeling that their environment is safe, that from administration, from their professors, when they feel that they're safe, they have those opportunities to experiment, like I said, and try things out, and then come back and reflect on that constant metacognition reflection. They have those opportunities kind of built in, and they don't feel like we have to follow, it's on our teacher evaluation system, or we're going to get knocked by this. They feel that safety. They're willing to make some of those tweaks, changes, and adjustments, but they have to be given a bit of ownership. And to do that, it has to be real and authentic and genuine to those teachers. And when it is, they might be willing to venture out and practice a little bit more. That's how I started. And I did this years and years ago. Nobody had to tell me to do it. It was something I felt that in my heart, I saw this change happening, and I wanted to, like you said, have that learner's mindset and kind of get ahead of that and meet some of those, but I am self-motivated. So I do try to help others to kind of see that as well. And when they see people excited and want to do this too, those changes start to happen. But it's a culture shift. We have to have a little bit of a culture shift there, encompassing all of those things I just said. Anything else to add, Dr. H?
Oh yeah, listen, I need to emphasize how important it is to model things. Now, I teach the 3 core courses in our program, and so I get the students after they have worked with Dr. Thibodeaux. And so she hasn't said this, but she actually encourages the students in such a way that she makes it safe for them to fail. We talk about failing forward. We give our students video and audio feedback on a regular basis. We communicate with them. We let them know it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to fail. That's part of learning. Failure is part of learning. And once our learners start to realize that is okay, they come into my core course with the innovation course prepared and willing to start to experiment. So Dr. Thibodeaux does an amazing job by letting our learners know that it's okay. She makes them safe. She builds a community. She lets them know that we're all learners, and she models it. She lives it. She walks the talk. And so it's exciting to see those students prepared and to see their mind, their thinking start to shift. And then usually by the end of a couple of the core courses that I do, I see that whole major shift. Sometimes they're just tipping their toes in a little bit. They're testing it out. They don't completely trust us. If you think about it, some of our best students, our A students, know how the system works. They know how to get an A on the test. And here they come into our program. We've changed all the rules. We don't have any tests. There are no tests. And you know what? They have to make up their own projects. And the instructor isn't the audience. They don't create stuff for us. And we create this learning environment, and we talk about supporting and encouraging each other. Well, we live it. And once they start to embrace that, once they actually, learn to trust Dr. Thibodeaux, they can come into my class and they just take off. And then we see them again. Dr. Thibodeaux will see them again later on. And when they start to publish some of their own work, a lot of our students publish their own work, they start to recognize that they own it, and they have changed their space, and they become advocates for change and innovation in their world. And again, it's all about that foundation, that mindset. We talk about the learner's mindset. Well, we use a bit of Carol Dweck's growth mindset to start things off. But we argue that, you know what? Carol Dweck is right. We've sort of quenched the growth mindset. Well, Dr. Thibodeaux and I are working on a book proposal right now where we're saying, you know what, let's not have to wait for the growth mindset to rebuild it. Let's actually enforce the learner's mindset from that earlier age and just build it so that we don't have to sort of rebuild it later on. And so, again, she creates that amazing environment, and she models the change that we want to see in our students.
Mm-hmm. So I want to throw this out there to you, because I do have teachers who they're all in. All right. I say, hey, let's do this. They jump in, they give me everything they have, but then they come back to me and they say, my students resist.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yep. Because they're like, I give them ownership. I give them choice. I give them projects. I give them, things to do. And the students are like, what? Huh? What do I do? Because they themselves are so used to being told what to do. They're so used to giving that multiple choice test, giving that worksheet. And so now when a teacher says, okay, so for biology, we're going over biomes. So instead of you're doing this diorama, you can create a video, you can do a podcast, you can do all these things. And now students are like, okay, now tell me what I need to do. So what do you say to those teachers whom you've trained, you've taught, they're excited, they're on fire. They go to their class and now they're meeting resistance.
Well, listen, you are so accurate in this. It's obvious what's happening. You've got the voice of experience here, so there's no denying that. Well, we don't lie to our students. We let them know that what you just talked about is going to happen, and it's the norm. And we do so by sharing personal experiences. Now, listen, I share a little bit of an experience. We do something, or Dr. Thibodeaux and I do something called a midterm evaluation in our courses. I've been doing a midterm evaluation for the last 25 years. And what that means is a few weeks into the course, I ask students, how's it going? What's working? What do we need to fix? What do we need to change? And many years ago, when I still teach face-to-face as well as online, but I was doing a face-to-face class and I was filling in for somebody who was ill. And I was doing a course on learning theories, and I shifted the course. So rather than the traditional read the book, multiple choice questions, I actually had the students involved in, taking ownership of the chapter, experimenting with different ideas, working on projects. And about 3 weeks in, I did my midterm evaluation. And I'll never forget, I had one student stand up at the back of the room and said, Dr. Harapnuik, you're not doing your job. What? She was angry. I could just see she was angry at me. She says, you are making us do this work. We have to come together and come up with these ridiculous projects. We have to read the chapter ourselves. We have to teach each other. You're not doing your job. You are supposed to be telling us what we need to know.
Oh.
And I remember thinking, what do I say? Fortunately, I was wise enough to not respond. And it seemed like hours. But then finally, somebody off to my side said, well, we're supposed to be future teachers. Well, isn't it our responsibility to take ownership of these things? And it's a lot harder for us to do this. But think about all the learning that we're going on. Well, guess what? Another student in the back room said, no, that isn't how it works. The teacher's supposed to tell us what we need to know. Another student stepped into the conversation. We had a debate emerge in the classroom about whether or not it was the teacher's responsibility to tell us what the student needed to know. And we didn't resolve the issue, but it allowed me to enter into the discussion about the fact that, I earned my PhD, and I did all this work, and you actually need to learn how to learn. And I can tell you everything you want, but until you learn how to learn, you're not going to own it. So I've created this environment. I've created a significant learning environment where you need to choose something, take that ownership, use your voice, and through that authentic project, you will learn. You'll make mistakes. You'll get frustrated. You'll have to have many iterations. But you know what? When you finish the project, you'll not have only earned the A. Nobody's going to take that learning away from you. It's tough. So we warn our students that this will happen. We prepare them for the fact that our educational system is the way that it is. We also, now you've talked about the fact there's resistance from students. There's resistance from parents, and there's resistance from other teachers and administration. because it's all about standardized testing. If the scores don't go up, be careful, right? You got to be careful about the test scores, right? So what we found, some of our students have actually bought into our COVA approach. One student in particular, up in New Jersey, his test scores were 5 or 7 points higher than they were before with this authentic learning approach. So we've got examples of students who've used the approach of authentic learning, and guess what? Test scores are okay. Because if you prepare your learners to learn and address life's problems, guess what? The test is actually pretty easy. So yeah, we prepare students, but it's not easy. We warn them. And you know what? I'd love to say, oh, 100% of my students get this. No. Most of my students, it takes a while for them to warm up. One of the things that we see, and then I'll finish on this note, is that when our students reflect on their learning experience, one of their biggest regrets when they reflect on, when they're doing their capstone course, is that they didn't take ownership sooner. Yeah.
Finish your sentence.
Yeah. So did I answer your question about how we deal with that? We model it, we warn them, we let them know it's going to happen, and we give them strategies for dealing with it.
Yes, yes. I mean, I just tell teachers, you know, to keep going, keep pushing, because students have to own the learning. I mean, that's so. There's no other way to put it. Like, yep. They're going to have to do it. So it's just really. Go ahead, Doc.
Yeah, the real world. People are looking for companies, jobs. They're looking for people who are communicators, who can solve problems, not somebody who can regurgitate what they were told, because that is not putting any type of theory or thinking into practice. The research shows it's harder to unlearn something than it is to learn something. So these students essentially almost have to go through an unlearning to learn how to learn. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And we refer quite a bit to Hattie and some of his work in that area. But we also, too, believe that learning is social. You have to be able to work with other people, communicate, solve problems. We have to be able to collaborate. And I'm thinking of, Dewey's ideas on social pragmatism and, social responsibility and learning to one another. But overall, I think once these, and we've said this before, this is true about our learners in our program, but also learners in the classroom. Once you give them a bit of control and they get used to that, and they have an opportunity to revise and restructure their ideas and organize their learning in a way that's meaningful to them. And like Dr. H has said, try to take it away from them. So let's push through this. So you can talk to this particular teacher you might be thinking of, push through this, and then try this again. They're going to be more comfortable with the fact that, wow, I was actually given ownership. I wasn't critiqued. I was given, my instructor actually was kind of a guide on the side, like we talk about, help mentor me through this, and built that relationship that way. And when they feel safe and they feel comfortable and they know that you're in their best interest to help them move their ideas forward, that's when they trust you. That's when they, you give them a little bit of control and they can take ownership. Without us giving up a bit of control, they can't take ownership. I see that very clearly. Not just with my students that I work with, but also with learners in the classroom. They have to find out what's important, meaningful, and relevant to them. That's when they take ownership, and they will. So you can't just give and give all the time. Sometimes the learner has to think to bigger, broader picture there, connect back to that.
There's one other little thing that we do, and Dr. Thibodeaux has been mentioning this as she's been talking about a variety of different things, and she's brought up names like Dewey and Papert and John Hattie. Well, guess what? We're educational researchers as well, so we do a lot of research, and I've been into the literature for almost 30 years. And so what we do is we let our students know, what I'm talking about, this idea of concrete learning. One of the most prolific and one of the most highly recognized educational psychologists of our century, Jean Piaget, has done hundreds of projects, and he's got exhaustive research to show that this works. Mm-hmm. Bruner, Dewey, Jonasson, Papert. There's some major big league learning theorists out there who've done the research, right? Don't just take our word for it. Do your due diligence. Take a look at these ideas, and these ideas are tried and true. There's a lot of educational research to support what we're doing. So we teach our learners, or we challenge our learners in our program. Don't trust what we're saying. Not at all. Look at those primary sources. Look at the literature. One of the things that we do when the students are developing their innovation plan, we also get them to build a literature review that they use to support their ideas, because we want them to be able to go into their principal's office, the superintendent's office, the administrator's office, and say, well, you know what? The literature on blended learning points to the fact that it's really effective because it increases engagement, it encourages differentiated instruction, it allows students to take more responsibility and accountability, and it helps to develop these personal learning and collaborative skills that are necessary for the 21st century. And here is a research to support that. So we equip our learners in our program to actually go to the literature and look at those primary resources. You know, we do talk about people like Dewey, as well as the contemporary researchers who've been researching over the last 3, 4, 5, or 10 years, or last decade. So, we say, hey, don't trust us. Look at the literature.
And to piggyback off of that, our literature is grounded in what we write, our research and our publications grounded in that literature. So if you'll check out, our websites at www.tilisathibodeaux.com, www.harapnuik.org, we have pulled together our ebook, our publications, and you can kind of see all of this and how we've pulled these ideas together to make this work. But we can't do this by ourselves. Our students have to really they're out there doing this, practicing this, understanding how to translate that theory to practice and dealing with these issues. And it's learning for us too. So we're learning together. We learn alongside our students. That's really what we're about.
And finally, we warn our students, there's no quick fix. There's no quick fix. Education, and let's be honest here, our educational system actually isn't that bad. It's working. Think about where we are in North America. Sure, we might not do all that well on the PISA scores, but actually if you take a look at the PISA scores and you do a multivariate analysis, you'll find that the North America isn't that bad when you factor out certain variables, right? We live in an amazing culture, and there's amazing opportunities, and our educational system has really brought us so far. We're on the cusp of losing some of those advantages if we don't shift, but for the most part, a lot of things have worked quite well. And the research of people like John Hattie point to the fact that the human being is the most amazing learning entity on the face of the planet. We learn, and there's so many things that are done that helps our students to learn. Hattie has shown through research, so unless you're physically abusing students or psychologically abusing them or doing things intentionally to deter them, quite often educational treatments will work. Some are better than others, and the focus should be doing those things that will work the best. So we're positive about education. We think that we have an opportunity to build on some amazing things that are happening. And you know what? Most teachers, they didn't go into education for the big bucks. They care. And that's the other thing that we do, is we get them to remember why they're doing what they're doing. They wanted to change the hearts and minds. They wanted to encourage young thinkers. They wanted to see these young children and young adults grow and develop and flourish. And so we encourage them and support them to be able to do that, to follow their dreams.
Yeah, so early on in the program, we're consistently focused on what are they passionate about? What are you passionate about? And I ask that a lot, and we cycle through that almost in every course. That passion is what gets them out of bed in the morning.
So online education is rapidly growing in higher ed. What are your thoughts on online learning, and where do you see it fitting into K through 12?
I'll jump into this one first, because as I had mentioned, I did my first blended course back in 93, 94, blended learning 93, 94, my first fully online course in 95. So I've been playing this game for a lot of years, and I have personally developed over 20 online courses, and the DLL program is the second program that I was involved in developing that's completely online. So I've been in the game for a while, and I see the amazing potential if you do online learning right. Okay, MOOCs, delivery of content. If you're just using, a Blackboard or Canvas or some learning management system to deliver content, and you use the learning management system to have standardized tests or automate testing, it doesn't really work that well. It'll work as well as that works in the face-to-face setting. You're just automating some things, right? But we believe that online learning, to be effective, really has to, you have to take advantage of the online learning environment and recognize the uniqueness of the environment and utilize the potential of that environment to actually do things that you couldn't do otherwise, to bring people together to collaborate in ways that they wouldn't collaborate with otherwise, and also to give students that ownership and that control. And you also have to recognize that the online learning environment isn't Blackboard or Canvas or Schoology. No, it's your learner's environment. Their online learning environment is that mobile device they use on the bus or in mom and dad's car when they're being dropped off, that tablet, or what they're doing in the library or after school. That online learning environment happens all the time and everywhere. So if you really take into account that we have ubiquitous access for the most part in North America, we do. There are places where you don't, but that can be mitigated, assuming that we have ubiquitous access. So many things can be done. So you've got to build and structure your online learning environment to take advantage of that and do things that you couldn't do face-to-face, to allow you to do things that you want to do face-to-face, to go deeper into things that you want to do face-to-face. So what we're seeing, and this is exciting, this is so exciting, more and more of my students in the DLL program who are teaching in K-12, and this is exciting, I've got kindergarten teachers right now who are promoting the notion of STEM thinking and STEM learning through an online blended course in kindergarten. I have some of our students working towards taking advantage of the world that they live in and the world that we created for them through the DLL program, and they're extending that world that we've created for them in the DLL program to their learners, and they're maximizing the potential. Online learning is all about taking advantage of technology to do things that you couldn't do otherwise, right? If you're just going to use Blackboard or Canvas or whatever you want to call it to do an automated test, why bother? The face-to-face test wasn't that great, so automating it isn't going to help it, right? You got to do more. So, we see the amazing potential. We also see a problem in the sense that you've got administrators and you've got politicians who are seeing online education as a way to save money, save time, cut costs. Well, instead of just teaching 20 students, we can teach 100. Well, not necessarily, especially when you think about the fact that in the DLL program, one of the most important things that we do is provide feedback. John Hattie's research points to the fact that feedback from a trusted coach or mentor is the most important factor in contributing to student achievement. Well, guess what? You can provide feedback in a myriad of ways in an online world. I allow my students to choose how they want to communicate, whether it's Zoom or Hangouts or on the phone or whatever. And we communicate on a regular basis. It's not uncommon for me to get a text message here, Google Hangout chat from students. Hey, Dr. H, I'm doing this. Can you take a quick peek at what I did here? I just want to verify I'm doing this. Couple of seconds here, and I'm giving them feedback as I go along, and all I'm doing is I'm that coach, I'm that guide, I'm that mentor. So you can't take and automate effective instruction and coaching by simply trying to scale things up. So there's sort of a mismatch. We've got politicians, we've got educators, we've got administrators who are looking to save costs, and they don't see the online realm as a space that actually connects people and brings them together and allows them to communicate, to collaborate in ways we haven't done before. They see it as a place that you can simply automate and make even more efficient the standardized system that Thorndike established 120 years ago. So that's a problem. The problem is, and research is clear about this, we are still using a 19th and 20th century industrial age model, and yet we're living in the digital information age. So that's a problem. That's a problem that we see, is that there's that mismatch. The potential isn't being maximized. You see it, you live it, you know what I'm talking about. And what we're doing in the DLL program is we're trying to model the type of 21st century learning that we believe will make a difference. It takes a little bit of work, though. It's not the easiest, but you know what? It's worth it. When you hear about kindergarten students, creating their own STEM projects, kindergarten students in an online environment, you're making some changes. That's exciting. That's exciting stuff. Did I answer your question?
Oh yeah.
Great.
So,
Dr. Thibodeaux?
I think that you covered most of that. I think the only thing that I was I was jotting a few things down, and I thought of, administrators, public education officials. Their focus is so heavily on the technology itself, and not the learning. And when you lose that because you want to cut time and you want to cut costs and you're thinking of how it's going to benefit the masses, you lose what humans are all about. Humans are about connecting with one another, that emotional side, that passion, that why. And that is the learning that we need to instill with our younger students, so they don't have to unlearn something when they get to high school and ask those questions like, well, you mean I need to be creative? How do I do that? So that's the big thing I think that you spoke to, and I just wanted to bring that out. So,
And so both of you brought up administrators, and I want to ask you about administrators and how do they lead innovation within their schools. So you can have a principal who they don't like technology, but their board approves a $5 million one-to-one technology initiative. So guess what? That administrator is now about to get a whole bunch of Chromebooks or iPads or what have you, and the expectation that is coming down from the mountaintop is this will be used. How is a leader at that point just going to wrap their head around this, the enormity of this, and actually lead innovation in their schools?
Well, I think there's a couple of challenges that we're facing in our system today, and that is a lot of educators, administrators, especially in the American system, gain their administrative status through testing. There's credentialing exams, and so they live in a world of testing and passing tests. They've got principalship exams. Up here in Canada, we don't have the same level of testing that we have for administrators, and so some of the Canadian administrators have a bit of a bad taste towards testing. So if you're preparing your administrators in very traditional standardized Thorndikean models, well, then they really don't know what to do with the technology, and they'll turn to people like yourself. You had mentioned that you one of your jobs is an educational or instructional technology coordinator or educational technology coordinator. They'll turn to people like you, and that's where people like yourself are able to step up and actually bring about the change and lead from the side or lead from behind. And to give you an example of how it can work, one of our students, one of our recent graduates, built an innovation strategy and plan, and then he saw an opportunity to actually promote his ideas in his district, and he made a pitch to become the innovation coordinator for his entire district based on the work he was doing in the DLL program, and they went for it. They gave him that position. And so using the ideas that he had established in the DLL program, the whole idea of the choice, ownership of voice, authentic learning opportunities, that good stuff, he was able to actually start the process where that change could happen. So if you're lucky, an administrator, a leader, will have somebody like yourself who knows what's going on, and they will trust them to implement those changes, right? Now, if you're lucky, some of those leaders, though, get a little bit scared, and they'll start to give you a bit of rope, but then they'll start to pull back. Well, how do we test that? How do we scale that? How do we measure that? And they get caught up with the measurement. They get caught up with, with specific results, and they get caught up with the technology, and they forget about the fact that it's not the technology. It's what you do with it that's important. It isn't, a success of a program isn't getting those tablets or those Chromebooks in the kids' hands. Not at all. That might be success to the IT folks because that's distribution. The success is, well, are they using those Chromebooks to create videos and to create e-portfolios where they're documenting their learning and building an e-portfolio that will get them into Harvard or Yale or Princeton? Well, that's success with technology. So you run into a bit of a challenge. People like yourself, we are preparing future technology leaders, and a lot of our graduates are looking at these innovation positions within districts to be able to lead that innovation. We prepare them. We've got a course on organizational change where we would take a look at the social side of organizational change. We take a look at the strategic side of organizational change, and we prepare them to recognize the challenges that are going to be out there. It's huge. One of the biggest problems that we face, our graduates face, is that systemic issue, right? Standardized testing, the test scores, right? What gets measured is important, right? And we all know that that's the way that goes. Funding, recognition, it's all related to that. So administrators who aren't willing to trust the fact that we need to actually venture out and build this environment where you promote learning how to learn, and then the kids will still do well in tests. They will, if you prepare them for it, right? We run into that challenge. So this is something we prepare our students for. We prepare them to actually do that. Now, what we are also doing, and this is exciting for us, is that we're building communities of practice right now, where after our graduates finish the program, we've built communities of practice across North America where we continue to work with them and support them and connect them with other leaders like yourself to let them know, hey, you're not alone. You're not the only person doing this. You can connect with Chad up in New Jersey. You connect with Kathy in Texas. You can connect with Judy in Alabama. You can connect with all these people who are doing what you're doing in different areas, and you can share your ideas and you can help grow. And then you can actually, show your administrator, hey, this is working in this other district, right? So one of the things we've also done is that it's not uncommon for our students to collaborate with each other. And we've had several students work in different schools across the country and share ideas and share presentation to show administrators that this is not just happening in my school, but it's happening out east, it's happening out west, it's happening in the south. Huge potential.
Dr. Thibodeaux?
That, I think you've basically read my mind. I mean, I could finish your sentences because we think so, closely. But building out this community of practice is so important because it helps them to see the successes and the debacles across, the issues that each other have gone through. But they're also, staying connected with us and actually we're working on a bigger project, and I won't go into that. But if you want to take a look specifically at some of the things our students are doing, check out my website. I've got their publications listed and them mapped on a little scribble map. So you can kind of see what they're talking about, what they're doing, all of the work that they've published around are what they're doing in their program. So, we've set up a significant learning environment where these learners have been able to reap the benefits of taking ownership and having choice and having real life authentic learning opportunities. They then go out and do these things in their schools, and then they come back and they say, well, I had to refine this, revise this, restructure this a little bit, and maybe my plan isn't what I started with. Maybe it's morphed into something so different. But isn't that life? Isn't that life? We have to be able to prepare our learners, our kids from kindergarten up, all the way up through K-12, through college, for those changes. And if we're not preparing our administrator to face those kinds of changes and they're shut down to a recipe and regurgitation or a standardization model, then they're closing off the mindsets. They're actually choking their teachers. You ever heard that saying, if you don't feed the teachers, they're going to eat the students? You have to be able to, in the face of change, resistance, adversity, find a way that's going to make it work. And to do that, sometimes you have to listen to what people are saying. Listen to what they need. Have that open, safe atmosphere, and they'll tell you what they need to be successful. And that's what we hope we give our opportunities through the COVA model, which we said: choice, ownership, voice, authentic learning.
And if I may add, Dr. Thibodeaux and I and Dr. Cummings are one of our co-authors. We just released a book on Saturday called the COVA, Choice, Ownership, and Voice for Authentic Learning. It's an open educational resource. It's an ebook, and we're making it available to all our graduates. Actually, we're making it available to everybody because we want to provide resources that our graduates and anybody can use to promote this way of learning and to support the learning. We're also in the process of building out a professional development course that some of our graduates can use to promote the COVA approach and have some of their colleagues have some of their colleagues do the professional development so that they too can actually get the benefit of the approach. So we're looking to actually extend our reach beyond the DLL program because we believe that we have an opportunity to make some changes. And really, we're just carrying out some of the ideas that John Dewey and people like Bruner and Piaget had started many, many years ago about the notion we're modern day progressive educators, who believe in experiential learning and learning by doing, all that good stuff. And so we've built some resources for our students and for everyone else that they can use to make a difference in their environment. So we're looking to continue that change.
Mm-hmm. So we're starting to get to the close of this interview. Very dynamic conversation here today. I want to quickly jump into digital citizenship. Recently, there was a student from New Jersey who goes to one of the colleges and university in Alabama, chose to get on Instagram and act a fool with some racial comments. Now, her sorority let her go, and so did the university. How important is it that college students, as well as high school students, truly understand what they post online and the sites they visit, how that can have a negative impact on their current life as well as future job opportunities?
One thing to remember, and I think it is extremely important to have that digital presence, and we talk about that all through our program. But something to think about is that never goes away. It's a digital tattoo. It's on a server somewhere. Anything you post, anything you share, it does not go away. And so we're always talking with our students to be cognizant about how they communicate with others, how they engage with others. It can follow you. It can haunt you when you least expect it. And that's something that I hate to say, you don't want to get burned and then learn it, right? Because it's a very touchy subject situation. But again, going back to that modeling, what are you putting out there that others can see? How are you, setting up someone else's perspective to see or think of something the way that it is. So especially our younger learners who are testing out and using the technology, they have to be, I think explicitly shared examples, and maybe not an example that where somebody lost everything, but they have to be able to see concretely, this does not go away. It is not a footprint. A footprint is washed away in the sand. A tattoo stays, and that is what it is. So you have to be extremely careful about what message, what image you're putting out there for others to see. Dr. H, you have anything?
Yeah, we actually respect this enough to dedicate an entire course to the subject. So one of our courses, EDLD 5316, focuses on this topic. And we included that because, listen, we're preparing future leaders. We're preparing future educators. We're preparing future members of society. Well, it's our responsibility to make sure that those future members of society know how to actually behave properly in society, right? So this is actually, I would argue that our course on digital citizenship is a course on using some digital common sense and how to live in a digital world. Yeah. So I think it's our responsibility as educators to touch on not just touch on those things, but to actually help our learners be able to work in this environment and to lead their students in the same way, to model the things that they believe are important, to recognize that you don't say certain things, and to recognize that if you are going to say certain things in a certain context, you have to provide that context, to recognize that respect for the other is extremely important. If you want to be a productive, functional member of society, this is just common decency. So we believe that it's so important we dedicated a course to it. So it's part of what we do. You can't go down this path and not address it. So the importance that you've given to it, we recognize that, and we agree with you.
And I have to mention one of our innovation plan projects from one of our students. Her name is Nancy Watson. She's
yes.
Yes, she's a member of ISTE.
Yeah.
And initially, upon building her innovation plan in her third course, what she was going to do, she had thought of this idea to, well, if I include these, I build these lesson plans out and I include these little check boxes, then the teachers must be covering the skill if all they have to do is check it off in their lesson plan, this digital citizenship skill. Actually, she learned a course or two later, that's not how the students were learning digital citizenship skills. She came up from her innovation plan. She birthed what she called CLICK. And if you look it up, CLICK, it's where students are teaching students. They're doing peer tutorials on digital literacy and digital citizenship. Now she's a DigCit chair at ISTE. She's one of the people that really runs with this idea. All started from one of her innovation plan ideas that was authentic to her learners. But what was key is I can't just check it off in a box and put it in my lesson plan and say that I'm doing it. She got her learners to take ownership of it by making the peer tutorials and videos themselves, and she posts them online for that access. Those learners right there are learning a lot about digital citizenship just by teaching one another. So, and then they're sharing that. And I think learners are more likely to listen to other learners in their peer group or their age if it's not always the instructor, sharing these are the things that you have to do. This is what's on the checklist. Moving away from that rubric-y, checklist-y sort of model and into that authentic learning opportunity. You can't go wrong there. So I had to add that bit on this.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. I had forgotten about the impact of that. And this was an early project that I looked at almost a couple of years ago. And if you take a look at some of the videos that these kids in grades 5, 6, 7, and 8 create for other students, these are students creating videos addressing all these issues. So the students are guiding and directing each other. They're taking responsibility. They're holding each other accountable. They're creating the videos. They're modeling the behaviors and activities, right? And you know what? If you've got students leading other students, well, do you think it's going to work? It's amazing to see. It's actually a lot better than just telling them what to do. And I think it's an amazingly successful project. And the quality of videos and the quality of instruction that the students are building for the students is so important. There's a fair amount of research. A guy by the name of Earlman has actually taken a look at this issue. And the data is quite clear. Students are going to accept information from other students and family members on the same par as the teacher or the professor. Okay, students trust other students, if not more. And actually, the younger you get, the more important it is that your peers are advocating it. So yeah, what Nancy is doing is absolutely wonderful. So again, this falls into this idea, you got to model. You got to model the world you want to live in. You got to model the type of a world that you think is going to be better for society.
Awesome. So we're about to wrap this up with this last question. What is your call to action for those educators who, on the horizon, they see the technology coming, but they're trying to run away from the monsoon?
My advice would be, don't focus on the technology. Focus on the learning, right? Technology is an amazing tool, if used properly, that can actually enhance learning and change lives, if you focus on the learning first. My PhD is in instructional technology. I'm a hardcore techie guy. I've been doing this for a long time. I like technology. I'm so much into technology, I won't even use I like using a headphone because the audio quality is much better. I'm all about the technology. But if you can focus on the learning first and then trust the research, trust a lot of leaders out there. There's people like yourself. There's people like Dr. Thibodeaux and myself. We're not alone. There's a lot of us out there. We need more of them, but there's enough leaders out there who are doing those amazing things. There's somebody in your school, somebody down the hall is doing some amazing things. Focus on the learning. Focus on that world you want to create. Focus on that potential you want to pull out of your learner, and then find the technology that'll help you get there. That is what will make the difference.
Yeah. And just to reiterate that, allow yourself a bit of time to experiment. We're not standing here saying you're doing it wrong. We're not telling anyone they're doing it wrong. We're focused on what can we do better. What can we do better? We're always focusing on that. And even in our program, it's constantly iterative. All of our writing, all of our articles, all our e-portfolios, everything is iterative, meaning it can be revised, restructured, reworked. And we get to that point because we collaborate with other people, because we're constructivists, because we're thinking about how the changes we make are going to impact others. And when we talk about teaching and learning, it's okay to experiment. That's how you get there. It's okay nothing ever is going to go right the very first time. Nothing I ever do goes right the first time. But try again. Maybe 10 times, maybe 2 times. I don't know. But just, consistently moving in one direction, set your mind on that path. Say, I'm going to have this learner's mindset. I'm going to allow myself opportunities to fail, rise back up again. I'm going to value and make my beliefs and sort of values align to this goal, and I'm going to move down that path. I may hit some bumps along the way. I may trip up, but I'm going to get back up and fail forward, because in failing forward, you're actually succeeding, because you're learning more than you would if you were just perfectly succeeding all the time. So I'm a living, breathing human in that way. So I completely empathize and understand with my learners. And I've worked with lots of little ones all the way K through 12 in my public ed experience. So I get that. And it's okay for their learners to fall too, because sometimes that's how they learn. Our students in our program have their innovation plans, and they sometimes have to 180 degrees switch their focus, and not based on our feedback, based on authentic, genuine feedback that they've had, or an experience that had to alter their course a bit. So a quote I always think of is, set your course by the stars and not by the lights of every passing ship. You find your way. You authentically find your way, and experiment. You're going to hit some rough waters. That's all right. They'll get calm again. The storm doesn't last forever. That would be my.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Harapnuik and Dr. Thibodeaux, for coming on the podcast today. I appreciate it.
Well, listen, we want to thank you. Wonderful questions. And I'm excited to see somebody like yourself who cares about making a difference. And if there's anything we can do to help you make a difference, just let us know, because I think we're working towards the same goals here. And, I'm excited when I talk to somebody like yourself, because I know we're going to be changing some classrooms. We're going to be changing some learners, and we're going to make the world a better place, one classroom, one learner at a time. So I'm excited. Great day. Thanks for the questions.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. Now, people, you know how I do this. The audio is going up on SoundCloud and iTunes. I need you to go there, subscribe, leave a review. Your boy's trying to get Oprah on the show. All right. So I'm trying to let her know I got it over here. So I need you to do that. The video cast is going up on YouTube. And of course, I will be tweeting this out, sharing it on LinkedIn and Facebook. So people, as always, invest in you, EDU, peace.